Hey, welcome to my channel. This is Spirit Soul Sense, information for your soul, and I am Sharice, and I love Jidenna. Jidenna released his sophomore album, and I love it. I love it. I love Jidenna. He just has like so much style and charisma and a different take on his musical style. Oh, I love it. And he also did an interview on The Breakfast Club that I listened to recently, and I mean, like, he is just everything. He's everything. So I've always thought about Jidenna as being very nuanced, having a lot of layers, and being a complex person. And his new album is like a different side of him. The way he's interviewing now is, you know, a little bit different, more personal. And it's just, there's just so much we can learn from celebrities, from people who create things and put out content, and then you can see their evolution. So I just want to talk about Jidenna's evolution, his journey, because to me it's very clear to see that he's a little bit different now than when he first came out. The Chief album was very masculine. It was very, I don't want to say misogynistic, but you could see that he was questioning some of the things that he was doing. He was kind of using women in a way, and you know, when he came out with the Boomerang one, you know, like the whole, I love an album that has interludes. I feel like if an album doesn't have like talking in it or isn't telling a story, then is it really an album? Maybe it's just a, you know, short snippet of something. But albums with interludes and a storyline, to me, is the best, and you can really get a sense of who the artist is. And so on Boomerang, he had this woman cussing him off. I mean, he was really on some shit, okay? And so you can see even in his song Bambi, like, he's talking about whoring. Like, he's really out here, like, getting it and not being serious about relationships. And even though, you know, he has this part that's reflected in his albums about relationships that, you know, he doesn't seem to get, or maybe it's the honesty thing, he still has this deep understanding of the world. He still is like fighting for his people and talking about very, very important topics like white supremacy and, you know, black role in the world in America. And then on this new album, he takes it even a step further, I think. He's got an outlook that I think is not unique to him. It's very reflective of the fact that he was born outside of the US, right? He's from Nigeria, and he has a white mother and a black father, and so his experiences are just very different. Anyone who's grown up outside of the US has a very, very different experience. And even his like drive to travel to Africa and live over there for a while it's not something that I think people who are born and raised in America are very drawn to, unless they also have like a parent or someone close to them who's from somewhere else, or like has this idea of home outside of the US. So his idea that, you know, black Americans should move to Africa, I think is a very non-American thing. Like, it's, the idea is, if you think globally about the world, and black and brown people are the majority, right? And once you have been outside of America, you can see that there's so much more opportunity to have. But black Americans are very American and they feel at home here. And so I would push back on anyone, especially who wasn't born in the US, who says you should just leave. Like, I listen to African Americans when they say, like, we built this place, we shouldn't have to leave. Like, we need a piece of the pie here. We would prefer to fight here than leave the place we built to go build up somewhere else. Like, that's just, so I get what he's saying. I grew up outside of the continental US. Like, I get it. I can see both sides of it because I've spent a lot of time trying to understand the perspective of African Americans and like why they don't leave. Like, I get why they don't leave. My healer and I, you know, we talk about this stuff, and she likes to say black Americans are in an abusive relationship with America. And once you've been in an abusive relationship and understand how they function, like, you completely get it. Like, you're really, really fighting for this change, and you think that you can make them change, but then they don't really. Anyway, my point is, he's thinking on a deeper level. And you know, when he was on The Breakfast Club, he was talking about this global perspective of blackness and how what we really need to do is invest in Africa. And if we invest in Africa, it will trickle down to the entire diaspora. I've never thought about that before, but I think it's a great idea, right? Like my healer is planning to go live in Ghana. Like that's her goal. I'm not. I don't know if I'm gonna go back to my little island or if I'm just gonna stay here in America, because there's definitely pockets in America of blackness where you can feel very comfortable and you don't get so much of the outside influence of the majority. And I think I have positioned myself to where I live in a bubble. My experience living here in America is reflective of who I am as a person, and so I have, fairly good experiences. I know that's not what it's like for everyone, and a lot of people don't have the privilege that I have of making a certain amount of money or living in a certain neighborhood. So like I get that I have been able to create, my world here. And then a couple other things that Jidenna talked about, like on his interview, that I thought was so interesting. I haven't been on social media in a long time, but I went looking at his Instagram, and then I felt like all of a sudden I saw him with this like sleeve tattoo, very, very intricate. And I'm gonna do a video about tattoos and the spirituality of tattoos, but sitting for a tattoo for like over 20 hours is it's so insane. Like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. My longest tattoo took like 3.5 hours. That was an experience. He he sat for that long to do a tattoo, but it's not just the tattoo. It's not just how long he sat for the tattoo. It's the idea behind it. And he was saying it has a lot of ancient symbols and Nigerian symbols, modern things that are reflective of his history. And so like one of the things about black people across the world is that because of colonization, because of slavery, because of the systematic oppression of black people across the world, a lot of the history has been erased. And in some places it's been erased less. Like in the Caribbean, there are still a lot of traditions and stories that are passed down that are very African in nature, that have just been like, augmented a little bit. They still hold true, like the essence of what that story was supposed to tell. And in those places too, a lot of the religions have been altered, but they are still there. In America, there has been just this, oh my gosh, there has been a lot of money put into erasing black history. And so what black Americans, people who are born here, experience is like this sense that there's no place that they belong. And so America has become their home, and they don't know their history. They don't know where they came from. They don't know the story beyond slavery, because there's a very rich and, substantial history beyond slavery that happened for 400 years. But if you can only like trace back your history for like 200 years, you stop in slavery. And so you don't get a sense that there was anything more meaningful about you. Not everyone is interested in going through that. Not everyone needs that, I think. But I think that one of the greatest problems in America for African Americans, for anyone black who is still in the mindset, right? It's really about the mentality. We've all been brainwashed. There has been a global empire brainwashing us about how bad and wrong being black is. Some people feel that more than others. In America, you are inundated with so many messages about how you're not valuable, important, all because of the color of your skin. So what's most important is unlearning all of that. You have to like reverse the brainwashing to realize that actually my blackness is like one of the best things about me, and my people, like my ancestors, were some of the smartest people in the world. They were pioneers. And once you get that, you get this sense that, you fit, you belong here. Jidenna has access to his roots and his history, and it's empowering for him, which led him to the tattoo, which I think is a very spiritual, deeply spiritual process. And then also his stance on relationships has changed, right? So whereas before it sounded like he was just kind of cheating and slinging dick out here, he's now in this space where he's interested in exploring polyamory. I think anyone who starts thinking a little deeper about life, this is one of the questions that they ask. Who you pick as a partner is one of the most important decisions you make in life. And so if you're not going to ask yourself, very similar to Esther Perel, In that book, she talks about asking yourself a lot of these questions. What is monogamy? Is it natural? Can you do it? Have you explored like all the reasons in a relationship that you might leave? What would you do if your partner cheated on you? Like all of these things. I think it's very, very, very important to ask yourself the questions. So he has explored these questions for himself and seen like what works for him. And so at the moment he's like interested in exploring polyamory more. And so he's been in a relationship like that already where he has acknowledged, and I know men, oh my gosh, I know men who say they want to be polygamous, right? And that's a very controlled relationship. I think in 2019 it's not necessary to be polygamous. Like the whole idea behind that was women couldn't have access to resources, and so they needed a man. And when the man had a surplus of resources, he could have more wives and have more children and build community, build his own tribe. I don't think that's necessary in America in 2019. That wouldn't work for me. But like I get men have found ways around cheating, and so I think polygamy is one of the ways that men say, oh, I want to have like 3 wives, but really I think what they want is to be able to have sex with multiple people. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to have sex with multiple people. We are biologically engineered to have multiple sexual partners, so I get it. I think monogamy is a choice. But Jidenna's saying not polygamy, but polyamory, where the woman also has the agency to date outside of the relationship, I think is like a different level. Most men are so controlling and jealous, and they would not at all be interested in having a relationship with a woman who's also having a relationship, sexual in nature, with someone else. And he said, it was one of the it was the most painful thing he's ever experienced. But he did it, like he made it through, and that was like part of his process. I think that's like one of the biggest indicators that when you get to this space where you're not clinging to another person, you're not attached in the sense that your sense of self is, derived from being with this person, you have reached like a Zen kind of space. And if it's in relation, like we are social beings, and if you're able to reach that level with relationships, you're really doing something special. Like I'm not that, it doesn't work for me. It wouldn't work for me, but I respect it. I've definitely thought about it, explored it a little bit, and then decided that it didn't work for me. I think we should all really explore these like deeper topics and see what works for us, what doesn't work for us, what's realistic, in 2019. Jidenna is one of my favorite artists. I think he is really deep and introspective, and you can see in like the art that he produces and the way that he carries himself and the stories that come out about him, that he is really like on his journey and is really leveling up from his time spent living in Africa to exploring different relationships and not adhering to any one religion, but being deeply spiritual and connected to God. I mean, what a model, right? What growth and evolution. That is what I love to see. I think it's very important what we consume, whether it's food, what we listen to, the people we are around. And so Jidenna is one of those higher level thinking people who will enrich your life. You might not like his style of music, and if that's so, then like don't even bother. But I mean, I love like Afrocentric everything. So Jidenna is like right up my alley. So you might want to check out his newest album. It's really, it's so good. It takes you on a journey. It tells you a story. And I absolutely love it. Thank you for watching.